look at what is behind it. Not the airship, the buildings behind it. Towers, domes, stone structures of a scale and precision that should not exist in the decade this photograph was taken. This image is from the 1870s. The airship in the foreground is not the anomaly. Airships existed in the 1870s, experimental, documented, real. What is anomalous are the buildings behind it. Structures of a complexity and scale that official history tells us were not possible in that period, in that location, with the tools supposedly available. This is the interior of a building from the same era. 16-foot ceilings, carved stone columns, vaulted arches with painted detail that modern craftsmen would take years to replicate. Gas lamps already installed, functioning, lit. We were told this period was primitive. We were told people lived in squalor, travelled by horse, built with simple tools. The photographs say something different. It is dawn in a Tartarian city. The streets are already graded, not dirt, not random cobblestone, precisely levelled surfaces with drainage channels cut along both edges, channels that still function in the cities that inherited these roads, over a century later, without modification. The buildings on either side of this street are not houses. They are not simple commercial structures. They are 5, 6, 7 stories of dressed stone with window proportions, calculated for something specific, not taste, not fashion, but function, light distribution, air circulation. Something we stopped understanding how to design. By mid-morning, the square is full. Look at what is behind the market stalls. Not one building, not two, an entire coordinated facade running the length of the square, identical proportions, identical cornice lines, identical spacing between columns as if built from a single plan distributed to contractors across an entire city. Official history calls this architectural style. Style does not produce identical measurements. Style does not produce buildings in Buenos Aires and Bombay and Melbourne with the same column spacing accurate to within centimetres. Built in the same decade by people who had never met. A plan does that. A shared technical standard does that. A civilization with centralized design capacity does that. These people are not living in a primitive world. They are moving through a system. And every element of that system, the streets, the buildings, the squares, was designed by someone who understood things we have forgotten how to understand. But the surface is not the story. This photograph shows workers in the 1880s breaking through a foundation layer beneath a city street. What they found below it was not dirt, not bedrock, not simple utility space. Completed brick archways, stone columns, drainage systems, sealed chambers with pressure-resistant walls and connection points for pipes leading to destinations no one could map. All of it built in the same architectural language as the buildings directly above. All of it older according to the geological strata around it than the buildings it sits beneath. Official history has an explanation for this. Earlier structures on the same site, the newer building constructed on top. That explanation contains a question it refuses to answer. If the lower level was built centuries before the upper one, why are they architecturally identical? Styles change across decades. Across centuries they become unrecognizable, yet the level below and the level above speak the same visual language with the same precision. Either the architectural tradition was so completely frozen for so long that nothing changed across centuries of construction, or the lower level was not built centuries earlier, it was built at the same time, deliberately buried. And the city above it was constructed as its visible surface, not its replacement. This is not a basement, this is an entrance. An entrance to something that runs beneath the city. Something with gas lighting already installed. Something with load-bearing arches engineered for continuous use. Something that connected buildings, districts, entire city sections through underground corridors that have been excavated, documented, sealed, and quietly removed from public maps. Who built this? Who used it? And why, when workers break through into these spaces today, are their findings classified as routine foundation discoveries and filed away without further examination? This is 1893. Look at it. An entire city, miles of buildings, boulevards, waterways illuminated by electrical light, not gas. not oil. Electrical arc lighting deployed at urban scale, reflecting off water channels, visible from miles away. Thomas Edison demonstrated the first practical incandescent bulb in 1879. 14 years later, an entire city is lit like this. The official story is that the Chicago World's Fair of 1893 demonstrated the possibilities of electrical technology to a world that had never seen it at scale. But look at the infrastructure behind that demonstration. Miles of underground electrical conduit, hundreds of distribution points, voltage regulation systems, arc lighting fixtures requiring precision carbon electrodes and continuous current management. All of this built and operational. You do not build that in 14 years starting from nothing. You build that in 14 years if the underlying infrastructure, the conduit, the distribution architecture, the engineering knowledge already exists. Return to the airship. It sits on a launch platform beside Tartarian towers. Behind it, organized teams of people in period dress stand at precise positions around the craft. This is not an experiment. This is an operation. People with defined roles operating a piece of technology with the casual competence of people who have done this before. Patent records for lighter-than-air craft exist throughout the 1840s and 1850s. Engineering journals from that period discuss propulsion systems, gas production, navigation techniques with a sophistication suggesting accumulated knowledge, not initial discovery. After 1900, these references largely disappear from mainstream documentation, not because the technology failed, because something changed in who controlled what was documented and what was not. These are the people who lived in this world. Look at where they are standing. Not a palace, not a royal residence, a hall. A functional interior space chandeliers already lit, ceiling height that would cost a fortune to replicate today. Columns of dressed stone that required quarrying, transport, and precision placement that official history attributes to barely organized labor forces with primitive equipment. Look at how they are dressed. The textiles are not homespun. They are manufactured cotton from India, silk from Asia, wool processed at industrial scale arriving in this room from production centers thousands of miles away, with the regularity that only a sophisticated distribution network can produce. These are not wealthy elites. The domestic workers are in this photograph alongside the family they served. Everyone in this room is wearing manufactured clothing. Everyone in this room is standing in a space with electrical lighting. Everyone in this room is living inside a system of infrastructure, trade, and technology that official history says barely existed at this moment. The question is not whether they were sophisticated. The photographs answer that. The question is where the sophistication came from and where it went. Look at the scale of the courtyard against the two figures crossing it. This space was not built for those two people. It was built for volume, for movement, for the daily passage of many people through an organized administrative or commercial center. The scale implies a population density, an organizational capacity, a daily rhythm of city life that the official historical narrative of this period simply does not account for. Who planned this? Who coordinated the construction of courtyards like this across dozens of cities simultaneously? Who possessed the surveying capacity, the mathematical knowledge, the organizational authority to implement identical design standards across continents in the same decade? The historical record is silent, not because no one asked, because the answer implies a level of coordinated civilization that does not fit the timeline we have been given. I want to be precise about what this investigation has found. It has not found proof of a secret society. It has not found evidence of deliberate suppression by named individuals. What it has found is a gap between what the physical record shows and what the official historical narrative explains. Streets too precisely engineered for the population supposedly using them. Buildings too mathematically exact for the coordination methods supposedly available. Underground systems too deliberately constructed for the simple utility purposes they are officially assigned. Technologies deployed at scale before the inventors who supposedly invented them had finished their first demonstrations. None of this is classified. The photographs are in public archives. The engineering surveys are in municipal records. The patent applications are in national archives across 3 continents. The canal network dimensions are in published engineering journals from the period. The evidence has always been there. What has been missing is the willingness to ask what it means when you look at all of it together, rather than each piece in isolation. What happened to this knowledge? What happened to the people who held it? What happened between the world in these photographs and the world that followed, where the infrastructure was inherited, but the understanding of how it worked was not? That question does not have a simple answer, but it has evidence. And that evidence is still sitting in the buildings, in the underground chambers, in the street drainage systems, in the ceiling heights of rooms that were designed for a civilization we have been taught to forget. We have only begun to look.